Good afternoon. Today I'll be presenting my research on Israel Keyes, one of the most chilling and organized serial killers in modern American history. What makes Keyes particularly fascinating and dangerous is how methodical and unpredictable he was. He didn't follow typical serial killer patterns. He had no specific victim profile, operated in several states, and often planned his crimes years in advance. He chose victims at random and showed no remorse for his actions. We'll explore his early life, military service, methods of killing, psychological profile, and how his crimes changed investigative practices. Through this presentation, we'll see not only how Keyes evaded capture for so long, but also how his actions forced the criminal justice system to adapt its approach to cases involving transient offenders. His case stands as a powerful example of how difficult it can be to catch someone who knows exactly how to avoid traditional detection methods. Israel Keyes was born in Richmond, Utah in 1978 and was raised in a highly conservative and isolated household. His family eventually moved off-grid to Washington State and became involved with the extremist Christian identity movement. Keyes was homeschooled with little access to mainstream society. This lack of exposure to normal socialization led to emotional and psychological issues early on. By his teenage years, he exhibited troubling behavior like torturing animals, committing arson, and stealing, all classic red flags for future violent tendencies. These early signs were largely ignored and/or dismissed. He was socially isolated and later admitted he felt no empathy or remorse for others. In 1998, Keyes enlisted in the U.S. Army and served until 2001. He was stationed at Fort Lewis in Washington, Fort Hood in Texas, and even spent time in Egypt. During his military service, he was known as a disciplined and quiet soldier, earning several awards. Fellow soldiers described him as someone who stayed out of trouble and followed the rules. This ability to blend in and also follow structure made him seem somewhat normal. Even while he was privately developing violent fantasies in his head, his military training gave him the skills in planning, having the patience and discipline that would then later help him stay under the radar as a serial killer. Unlike many serial killers who follow recognizable patterns, Keyes did the opposite. He avoided patterns intentionally. He chose his victims based on opportunity, not type. His kills were carefully calculated and spread across multiple states, which helped him evade detection. One of his most chilling tactics was the one that they call kill kits. These were containers usually filled with weapons, restraints, and cash, which he buried in various locations across the country. He would travel thousands of miles to retrieve these kits, sometimes years after burying them, before committing any of his crimes. He also used rental cars, paid in cash, avoided using cell phones, and stayed off the grid. This high level of planning and preparation is extremely rare. He would fly into one state, rent a car, commit a murder, and then fly home, leaving little to no trace. Law enforcement ended up calling him a meticulous planner who often stayed one step ahead by studying all the police procedures. Israel Keyes confessed to 11 murders, though only 3 have been confirmed. One of the most disturbing cases was the 2012 kidnapping of 18-year-old Samantha Koenig from an Anchorage coffee stand. He held her hostage, murdered her, and then continued using her ATM card across several states. Keyes kept her body frozen so that he could stage a ransom photo that made it appear that she was still alive. Afterward, he dismembered and disposed of her body in a lake. In 2011, he murdered Bill and Lorraine Currier in Vermont after breaking into their home. He had planned a kill kit 2 years earlier before this crime. The Curriers were tied up and killed in an abandoned house. Keyes then admitted to murder multiple other murders, but refused to give names or details, claiming he wanted to avoid hurting any families. His vague confessions and later suicide left many unanswered questions about his full list of victims. Keyes was arrested in Texas after using Samantha Koenig's ATM card, which triggered surveillance and banking alerts. His arrest led to a lengthy FBI interrogation. He was calm, polite, and manipulative during all of his interviews. He confessed to multiple crimes, but on his own terms, often withholding names and locations. He had stated that he wanted to keep details hidden to protect his daughter from learning the full extent of his crimes. Keyes did have a longtime girlfriend and a daughter, both of whom did live with him in Alaska. Despite his double life, he was described by neighbors and coworkers as a loving father and a hard worker. He had managed to hide his crimes from everyone around him by maintaining a normal daily routine. He ended up running a construction business and had no criminal record, which was what allowed him to fly under the radar. In December 2012, he had committed the suicide in his jail cell by slashing his wrists and hanging himself with a bedsheet. His suicide note contained disturbing references to murder, but no new details or names. Authorities have believed several of his kill kits remain buried and still untouched. His death had robbed the victims' families of any closure and investigators of any critical information needed. Israel Keyes was a textbook example of a high-functioning psychopath. He exhibited traits of antisocial personality disorder, including lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and an inflated sense of self. He derived pleasure from planning and executing murders and appeared emotionless when discussing them. Unlike many other serial killers, he did not kill for any fame or attention. He actively avoided it, actually. His ability to suppress his urges for long periods and then act with such violence suggests strong impulse control and obsessive tendencies. He is actually considered an organized offender because he's one who plans meticulously and leaves little evidence behind. Experts would compare his level of sophistication to military strategy, making him one of the most difficult serial killers to profile. His dual personality, calm and friendly in public, yet cruel and methodical in secret, made him exceptionally dangerous. Keyes ended up exploiting a lot of weaknesses in law enforcement systems. Because his crimes occurred across various states, information was often siloed and not shared effectively. Many jurisdictions didn't realize they were dealing with the same killer. His case prompted calls for improved communication and resources sharing across state and federal agencies. The FBI now emphasizes early coordination, centralized databases like the VICAP, and behavioral threat assessments. His case also illustrated the dangers of assuming patterns when investigating serial crimes. Keyes' methods encourage the development of new profiling techniques based on behavioral anomalies rather than demographics or location. He also ended up forcing law enforcement to reconsider how to track offenders who avoid digital trails entirely. In the wake of Keyes' cases, there were renewed interest in early intervention for at-risk youth displaying violent tendencies. His childhood behaviors, animal abuse, isolation, and fascination with violence were missed red flags. Mental health programs in schools have since expanded to identify and treat children who show similar warning signs. Law enforcement agencies have also invested in criminal psychology training and digital forensics to better track offenders like Keyes. Federal agencies now collaborate more closely through systems like the VICAP and CODIS to identify cross-jurisdictional offenders faster. Keyes' case also sparked debate on balancing privacy rights with monitoring of individuals seeming high risk. Prevention efforts now focus more on identifying behavioral issues early rather than simply reacting after a crime has occurred. Israel Keyes was not a typical serial killer. He avoided detection by eliminating patterns, traveling across state lines, and planning meticulously. His military background, intelligence, and lack of empathy made him a uniquely dangerous individual. He admitted to 11 murders, but the real number is likely higher. His ability to blend into society while committing horrific crimes teaches us that danger can hide in plain sight. The case forced changes in how law enforcement handles serial murders, emphasizing early warning signs, improved integrity communication, and better psychological profiling. Though many questions still remain, his legacy continues to influence criminal justice practices today. His case reminds us of the importance of ongoing collaboration between law enforcement, psychologists, and policymakers to prevent such cases in the future. Thank you.